Good morning again, everyone. If this was WXII 12 News at noon, we would not be on time. We would be telling Brian Slocum he had to shorten weather. And I don't want to tell anybody they have to shorten anything. So if everyone can just grab their table and start enjoying their lunch. I am here today to welcome you to the 16th annual ABC of NC Gourmet Lunchbox Luncheon. Yes, absolutely. 16 years of this fantastic event that has become one of my favorite days of the year. And I'm sure after you experience today's program, it will solidify your opinion of that very sentiment. I am Michelle Butt. I am the president and general manager of WXII 12, the aforementioned NBC affiliate here in town that will be starting a new newscast in about 20 minutes, and the president and general manager of WCWG, the Triad CW, now home of the ACC football. And I just found out yesterday, for all you Carolina fans, the UVA Carolina game on Saturday the 21st will be on the CW beginning with a 6:35 kickoff. So go Heels. Please, husband, don't divorce me. My husband is a Wake Forest graduate. I just want all of you all to watch the game on my station. Anyway, like all of you, I do have a lot of titles. One of them is also secretary for the board for ABC of NC. And my fondest title is that of mother, and mother to a very special alum of ABC NC, my son, Jackson. Thank you for being here with us in person. We also have a lot of virtual guests today. So anyone joining us online, we appreciate your support of today's event as well. For all of you, you can find details of today's program on page 5, and it was included in your virtual link if you were joining us from home. To anyone that hasn't yet started eating, dig in. As someone who has the pleasure of dining at a lot of restaurants around town, I can assure you that today's food is great. We are supported by wonderful local companies, including Milner's American Southern Cuisine and Cocktail, River Birch Lodge, Canteen, The Porch Kitchen and Cantina, Rooster's Woodfire Kitchen, The Village Tavern, and BJ's Restaurant and Brew House. And dessert is an always popular and favorite, Moravian cookie from Dewey's Bakery. So thank you so much to all of our wonderful local businesses. Our good friends at Source 4 also deserve a round of applause. They are the company that has been providing us your lunchbox for many years. I have quite the collection at my house. So as a reminder, make sure you grab yours today as you head out and add it to your collection or start one. But again, thank you so much to Source 4 for this small token of appreciation from ABC of NC. And now comes the proverbial thank yous that we always have at these events for everyone that was responsible for making today happen. First, I'd like to ask my fellow board members for ABC of NC and the ABC of NC Foundation to please stand, because they are an important part of making this event successful. I also want to thank our dedicated table captains. We have many who have returned to this position year after year, and you bring with you friends and family and colleagues. And whether this is your first time serving as a table captain or your 16th, thank you for understanding the role this event plays in the work that happens on a daily basis to improve the lives of young adults and children in the Piedmont Triad. As a gift to our table captains, John Elder Robinson's book, Look Me in the Eye, My Life with Asperger's, is at the center of the table and is yours to keep. Absolutely. Perhaps the team, though, that deserves the biggest round of applause right now is the wonderful and dedicated staff of ABC, many whom are here today. And if you are a member of the staff, please stand and be recognized. Many members of our direct care staff are on campus right now doing what they do best, providing high quality educational and therapeutic services for children with autism or autistic children and their families. And as my family can attest, this is awe-inspiring work. It changes the lives of families daily. I know it did ours, and their efforts mean more than words can ever express. We also want to give a very pointed shout out and thank you to our development team, Aaron, Jordan, DeAndre, and Cindy, who are responsible for putting together today's wonderful event. Today's Gourmet Lunchbox is proudly presented by Vivid Metal Prints. Thank you, Vivid, for your sponsorship, and we appreciate the support. Also, many thanks go to some very familiar faces if you've been at this luncheon before, and that is Mary Louise and John Brenner, Miss Ann Brenner, and Felice and Richard Brenner for their platinum sponsorships. Thank you all so very much. There are a lot of sponsors, so I would love for you to check out their names on pages 2 and 3 of your program, because without their generous support, this would not be happening today, and the further impact that ABC of NC has in this community would not be happening. And that is not an overstatement, folks. You see, since 2005, ABC has been able to provide over 3.3 million in financial assistance to families. Without you, that would not be possible. And without that, too many families would face the uncertainty of what an autism journey is. Do me a favor then, if you don't mind. Please continue to support the people and the businesses that support ABC of NC, because what you do to support them allows them to support us. And in turn, that makes a difference in the lives of families every day in this community. And the last thank you, because there are always a lot, the last thank you is to you. Whether you are at home or here, thank you for taking your time to be with us today. Time is, for so many of us, the most precious thing we have. And when you choose to give it to this organization on this day every year, it is so appreciated, because it further helps the team at ABC realize one very clear vision. And that is that autistic people, the thousands in our community that are on the spectrum, that they are able to reach their full potential in a world where each is valued, where each is accepted, and each is included for exactly how they are wonderfully, perfectly made. And lastly, not a thanks, but another round of applause is going to be necessary, because before she speaks, it is very important that we acknowledge and express our sincere gratitude to ABC of NC's Executive Director, Celine Johnson, for her 25 years of work with ABC of NC. Ladies and gentlemen, Celine Johnson. I'm just gonna let you enjoy this for a second, okay?
Wow, I was not expecting that. That's so nice. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Welcome to everyone who's here at the Millennium Center to help us celebrate this day, and also to those of you joining us virtually. We are so grateful that you're here and that you've chosen to spend just a part of your day with us. I had a bunch of thank yous that Michelle already covered, so bear with me as I do some skimming and make sure that we got everybody. We did have a few volunteers who helped us with packing our lunch boxes and setting tables today, so thank you to our volunteers. I also want to say thank you to our clients. We have some client families here today. former client families and present. And they entrust the care of their children to us every day, and that means so much to us and to our staff, and I know to me personally. And because our clients are so important, I do want to say there's a little teaser for you. A little later in the program, we are going to unveil our latest promotional video. It's true, you all are going to be the first audience. I think that you're going to hear from some of our families to learn more about their experience in the journey of autism and with ABC of NC. So I am really looking forward to that and hope you are too. Let's see. Oh, my last thank you is to Felice and Richard for being such visionaries. They believed that autistic people deserve to have opportunities far beyond those that were available in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I am so thankful to have been a part of seeing their dream and their vision become a reality. So I think that's my thank you. So let's give, and the sponsors, thank you again to our sponsors. Let's give them one more round of applause. Okay, so it's really hard to believe that we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. I know that's weird that they said it's my 25th, but it's only our 20th. That's bizarre. There was a company that was called Autism Research Center that Felice and Richard kind of merged with when they had the vision to form a nonprofit. And I had been working for that company since 1998. And so they were so generous to count my service to Autism Research Center as also my service to ABC of NC. So that's why it's a little weird with the numbers. In case anyone was questioning, you weren't. Okay. Gosh, so much has happened though since those early days at Highland Presbyterian, and we know that there's so much to come. And I have the honor of kind of sharing with you some of what's happened over the past year since we saw you last. And I want to say, firstly and most importantly, our clinical leadership team is auditing all of our clinical and educational practices to ensure that they are truly neurodiversity affirming, culturally responsive, and informed by autistic self-advocates. Just like our speaker today, who joined us yesterday at ABC of NC, and we just took in any feedback he could give us. We're so grateful for that. We've also developed a guide for parents and caregivers who are seeking specialized therapy services to ensure that they are neurodiversity affirming when they're looking for services. ABC of NC has a wait list, and often we have to tell folks, you can get on our wait list, but don't wait for services. We want you to go ahead and start getting that support. And so it's really important to us that when we do that, we try to help those families be informed consumers. I say this particularly to the pediatricians and other referral folks in the audience. Please feel free to share a new document that we've put on our website that is specifically about how to choose a therapy provider. It has some red flags and green flags, what to look for. So please share that. Also, one of the things we talked about last year was how difficult staffing had been during and post-COVID. So I'm really proud and happy to say that we are finally experiencing better recruitment and retention, which ultimately means more clients able to access our specialized services. Through our Burris Brenner Employee Scholarship Program, which we launched a year and a half ago, we have multiple staff members who are working towards their master's level credentials as behavior analysts specializing in autism, as there is a huge shortage of autism professionals across the United States. We also launched a new position this year to enhance our non-public school services. In July, we hired our first curriculum and instruction specialist. We received a generous grant through the American Rescue Plan Act to enhance our existing playgrounds, including installation of soft surfacing and more swings, hands down the most popular playground equipment we have. This funding is also going to allow us to upgrade our HVAC system in the existing non-public school that we have, when we purchased the property, that has had some air quality issues, and so we're really glad to know that we'll be able to update that system. After more than 10 years of advocacy, professionals who specialize in the therapeutic services we provide at ABC of NC, they're called board certified behavior analysts, are now able to be licensed in, in the state of North Carolina, no longer requiring the supervision of a psychologist. And this huge milestone means greater accessibility to autism services across the entire state of North Carolina. And of course, the most exciting and important thing we do every day is providing services to our clients. Please take a moment to check out the client success stories on pages 9 and 10 in your program today. One of those stories, recently shared by one of our behavior technicians with our board of directors, celebrates a client who, after her mother passed away, stopped allowing anyone, including her dad and siblings, to wash her hair. Many of you know that we have a mock Great Clips salon in our clinic building where we are able to work on just these kinds of things. And I do want to do a special shout out. We have a whole table of Great Clips franchisees who are a part of supporting that. So thank you to you all too. So with the wonderful accessibility of that Great Clips Mock Salon and our behavior technicians and behavior analysts, gentle, affirming therapeutic techniques, she's now allowing her family, her dad, and her siblings to wash her hair, which is a seemingly simple task that so many of us take for granted. It's those little things that we're doing every day. So lastly, as we continue to emphasize messages of equity, inclusion, and belonging throughout our campus and our community, my colleague, Darlene Steele, is here to share more about the work we're doing to keep us moving forward. Thank you once again for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. I am Darlene Steele, the Clinical Practice Manager and the Chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. We call this DEIB. Our journey started years ago with our leader, Celine Johnson. She understood the need to create a safe environment for all, which meant we had to acknowledge that we are all different, respect our differences, and expand our cultural awareness while getting to know each other personally. Many may question what DEIB is and why is it so important to us. The question is simple, or the answer is simple. We serve and employ people from various diverse backgrounds, and we want to ensure that anyone who enters our campus feels safe, accepted, and included. And believe it or not, this requires work, dedication, and being intentional on all our parts. We are glad that you're here today to be a part of us furthering our mission of providing high quality services and ensuring services are accessible to individuals from any economic background, offering support and hope to our families, and advocating for inclusion and acceptance. The subject of DEIB is popular in our culture, workplaces, and media. Perhaps you've noticed that often people with disabilities are left out of conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Your presence here today indicates that you are working to make our community more accessible and inclusive to autistic and neurodiverse people. Thank you. We work hard to create the most inclusive environment for our clients, staff, and volunteers. In 2017, we formed the Champions, a group of staff members from various positions throughout the organization who are motivated to drive positions through our organization through culture education for everyone. The focus of Champions is to ensure awareness, knowledge, respect, understanding, and acceptance of our uniqueness as individuals, and to ensure that the message is translated into the care we provide to each of our many diverse clients. Our goal is to understand the wholeness of each person we serve and employ so that they can feel a true sense of belonging. The champions consistently remind us, you belong here. In 2022, we hired Heinz Gaither Consultant, a DEI specialist, to assess our organization through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. Our consultant conducted one-on-one interviews with leadership, focus group with our employees, and interviews with members of our board of directors to determine what we were doing well, along with barriers and gaps within the organization. One staff member said, with DEIB, we have a lot of resources and emotional labor going into our shared goals. We are frantically trying to learn as much and as fast as we can. We are trying to embed this into our culture, and we are on fire. Another employee shared that at ABC of NC, DEIB is embedded better than any other company I have ever been at. While we are proud that our employees recognize the efforts our organization has made to improve our culture, of course, there is still work to do. As a result, we now have a DEIB committee, and that is responsible for implementing recommendations by our consultant. The committee strategically works to improve inclusive practices with our policies and procedures, training, and communication while ensuring alignment with our mission, vision, and values. We are excited about the work we're doing on our campus and in our communities to ensure that everyone feels safe, accepted, and included. We hope that as you join us today for today's exciting event, you feel the same way. As I end, I want to leave you with this. Please take a moment to look around your tables and around the room at our diverse supporters that are here today. Just know that you belong here. Thank you.
If you were excited and blown away by what Celine and Darlene had to share, just wait until the rest of this day's program, because it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, John Elder Robinson. John grew up with Asperger's syndrome, but was undiagnosed until the age of 40. The lack of a diagnosis, though, did not impede his incredible life. In his new book, Switched On, Robinson describes how a powerful brain therapy has allowed him to sense other people's feelings and claim a newfound emotional intelligence. A leading voice on autism, John implores audiences to find strength where other people can see weakness. John is the neurodiversity scholar in residence at the College of William and Mary, and one of the founders of its neurodiversity program. And if you think that sounds like something pretty unique, it is. It is the first of its kind at a major American university. He teaches neurodiversity at its main campus in Williamsburg and William and Mary's Washington, D.C. campus as well. He is active in ongoing discussions about the ethical, legal issues around autism therapy and services and intervention, and is particularly interested in improving quality of life for those living with autism today, both autistic people and their families. John's been a member of the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and he serves on the board for the U.S. National Institutes of Health, the Center for Disease Control, and private organizations. His teaching is not just confined to William and Mary. He is the professor of practice in the Department of Education at Bay Path University in Massachusetts, and is also the co-founder of the TCA Auto Program, a special ed high school program for teens with developmental challenges based in Springfield, Massachusetts. And talk about side hustles. In his younger days, John worked as an engineer for KISS and Pink Floyd's Sound Company, and worked on original electronic video games at Milton Bradley. And later, he founded J.E. Robinson Services, which restore Land Rovers, Rolls Royces. I'm so impressed by this. I can't even say the name of the cars. And Mercedes. And like I said, pretty cool side hustles. Anyway, get ready to enjoy yourself, and please welcome to the stage John Elder Robinson.
morning, and thank you for welcoming me back to your city here and for joining me today. I'm up in Massachusetts, and it's a remarkable thing. But you know, you're all here because you believe in the idea of supporting neurodivergent people. You're here for the center, for the ABC Center, doing that, and it's just something to think that I walked around there yesterday looking at the kids, and I was struck, as I always am, by the tremendous range. Some kids are very articulate and poised, and other neurodivergent kids, they don't talk at all. Some are quiet and still, and some are bouncing off the walls. One thing I would say they had in common is they all had, to me, a visible disability. And I think back to when I was in school, the therapies and approaches that we use today to help neurodivergent kids find their way in life didn't really exist. But one thing did exist that you have here, and of course I had, and that was language lab therapy. They put me in language lab, and I hated it at the time, sitting there repeating these nonsense phrases into tape recorders, and the teachers would listen to me and they'd send me back there and I'd do it again. But you know, I came out with a good command of language, and I look at those kids, and I look at me, and I look at your reactions to me today, and I think, what a striking contrast. Because every boy and girl that grows up, especially with autism, but also with ADHD, with dyslexia, with Tourette's, all these things that form the circle of neurodiversity we talk about today, every single one of us heard what was wrong with us from the moment we could walk and talk. Everyone called us names. They told us we were stupid. They told us we were lazy. And certainly I was no exception. And to see the transformation from being a little boy, a little girl in a program like yours, to being up here today. Because, you know, the hard truth is, some of you must have been the people calling some of me that stupid kid all those years ago, and yet somehow we've all changed, and I've earned your respect, and you've earned mine. And you know what that shows is ultimately we're all in this together. People have come to respect me because I do things that they value, that you value, and you all do things that I value. And I think that is a real essential truth that is missing from the knowledge base that little kids work from. They don't really know that, but it's a really important thing. Now, You heard that I was, I was engineer for Britannia Row, Pink Floyd's sound company, before I did this kind of thing. And doing that, which sounds like a cool job, huh? Making stuff for Pink Floyd's people to use. And it was a cool job. It was one of the best times in my life. The reason that I think it was such a great time in my life is that I started out doing okay. I did okay in nursery school, and I struggled in first and second and third grades. I got a good teacher who was a grad student at the University of Massachusetts. And with his help, I took a whole slew of awards in my 5th grade class. And I did great. But by the time I was in the 9th grade, I was getting straight Fs. And the teachers would say, "You're just lazy, you're defiant, you're just a sociopath trying to trick us and put us on." And, do you think that I willingly just sat there and put up with that from these teachers? Do you think for a second, if I couldn't have passed their tests and done their assignments, I wouldn't have done that? Of course I would have. And it's true that I was smart at that point. By 9th grade, I was well spoken. I could write well. I was beginning to understand electronics and technical things. But it is also true that I could not master algebra. I could not master English grammar. I could speak it. I could solve mathematical puzzles, but I could not do the work they presented me. And today, we might recognize that as a sign of autism or developmental difference. But all too often, we still call it stupid, lazy, defiant. That is still really an unfortunate truth. And I think that the challenge for the kids that you all are working with and supporting for this next generation is going to be to turn that around. And you might think, well, how are we going to turn it around? I think one way that I work to turn it around, and I hope people will follow me, is to come out and speak about neurodiversity, speak about our lives to people like you. And I think now that standing up here talking to you is 25 years I've been getting up on stages, talking to folks about autism and neurodiversity and getting along. And before that, I had 20-some years working backstage, putting on rock and roll music. And I never would have thought in a million years that I would be the person actually standing up here and not the guy in back, operating the equipment. But there it is. And I think that young people who are growing up different, well, to be clear, young people who are growing up being told what's wrong with them. They're told what's wrong with them by mean kids. They're told what's wrong with them by well-intentioned kids. Well-intentioned teachers and other folks, even parents, say things to kids like me that hurt us inside for decades. They don't do that to be mean. I mean, I'll grant you that, people also do things to be mean, but they do that because neurodivergent people often don't have the visual responses that you expect. So, for example, if you see something and it makes you happy and you smile and you look at a little kid like me and I'm not smiling, I'm just standing there stony-faced. And you might think, what's the matter with him? He doesn't care. You see somebody fall down and get hurt, or you hear that your mother's in the hospital and you start crying, and you see a little boy like me and I just stand there and you think, what a cold-hearted little thing. He doesn't even care. And of course, you make that judgment based on my and our absence of a visible reaction. And you know, I didn't learn until I got involved with autism science when I was in my 50s that the science shows that people like me actually have deeper and stronger and longer lasting emotional responses to things that we see. Even as I could look at a playback of myself on a monitor, and I would have to admit that I did not show any discernible response. I could sit there in a lab and they could show me measurements of skin conductance, heart rate, breathing, and they could say, here, you have this strong emotional response. Here it is. And I could look at the video and there is nothing to be seen. Even though I could remember that I was having the feeling and seeing it again on their instruments, brought it back, you couldn't see it. And so that, in a nutshell, is the foundation of why this goes awry between us. Because we don't respond in the way that the majority of the population expects. So, for many of us, success can only come later in life because we live in a world where we are ultimately defined by what we do. And a good many of us neurodivergent people have been born to deploy our brain power in other ways than typical people. So even though we may not be able to respond with the facial expressions you want or need, we might be able to look into the eyes of a horse on your farm and know what the horse is feeling. Even though we can't look in your eyes and tell what you're feeling, we can tell that about the horse. We might be able to stand in front of your car making a noise. And from the millions of noises that we've heard cars like yours make before, we know exactly what's wrong and we'll be right. We might be able to create works of art, works of poetry that you think are beautiful and magical. And yet, we cannot behave in that way in front of you. You know, that was really brought home to me with the book that's on your table there, Look Me in the Eye. Because after a few years of going around and looking to speak to young people growing up with autism, the neurodiversity concept hadn't evolved at that time, I thought to myself, I should write a book because I can't find a lot of autistic people to talk to. And when I thought about writing the book, I thought, I'm going to write me stories of my life that are going to show how autistic people like me are different from folks who aren't autistic, so that the non-autistic among you would understand how we are different from you. And if you could understand us, you might, value us better, and it might help us get along. And when the book came out, it actually had a lot of publicity, and it was a bestseller before it even reached bookstores. And Random House sent me out to talk to people in bookstores, not a group like you who love autistic and neurodivergent people and are here to support us, but just the random public in Barnes and Noble and other bookstores and independent bookstores all over the country. And went in there, and these handsome guys and beautiful girls, they would come up to me, and I say that because if you were ever a marginalized kid in school, and I know some of you were, and you remember the pretty girls that were the cheerleaders and the guys that were the football quarterbacks and the guys that did this and the girls that did that, and they were always the ones that just kind of laughed at the losers like me. And so some of those people started coming up to me at these bookstore events, and they would say things like, oh, this story about how you felt in high school, that just resonated with me so, because I want you to know that I felt exactly like you. And at first I looked at these people and I thought back to when I was in 7th grade and I went to my first high school dance, and kids said to me, go over and ask her to dance. She wants you to go dance with her. And I would go over there and they would all start laughing at me. And I thought it was like that, but it wasn't. And you know, it took me talking to a lot of handsome guys and pretty girls to finally get the message. And the message was that ultimately I had not written a book about how people like me are different. I had written a book about how we all feel exactly the same. Because now I understand that all the feelings that I articulate in that look me in the eye are the very same feelings that every single one of you feels at various times in your life. The only difference is that you can't tell I'm feeling them. And therefore, your reaction to me is different than perhaps your reaction to him or her who do respond to you in the way you expect. But ultimately, when you come to know and love a neurodivergent person who doesn't have those responses, you become used to it. And so you know and love them, and they know and love you, and things work. And it's a really amazing thing that a book that talked about how different we are really became a story of all being the same. So there's another thing about being the same that I want to talk to, but one thing I want to mention to you. Look me in the eye, the title there, the subtitle is My Life with Asperger's. And I haven't said Asperger's once during this talk. I only have said autism, and you might, wonder why that is. And the reason for that is that in the years around the Second World War, there were some Jewish clinicians in America. Dr. Connor and Dr. Frankel, and they were the two people who originated the concept that we call autism here in America and in most of the world. Over in Germany, Dr. Asperger, a Catholic clinician, originated a very similar set of behaviors, describing essentially the same thing that ultimately became it became what we call Asperger's syndrome. And you might think, well, that's a strange coincidence. How is it that they came up with that same thing? And the answer, which isn't really very widely known, is that Dr. Asperger was a medical resident in Dr. Frankel's child guidance clinic at the University of Vienna Medical Hospital. And the reason that Dr. Frankel went to America to work with Dr. Connor is the Nazis came to power and threw him out. And they put Dr. Asperger in charge when he really was he was a last year medical student. That's not, though, why I don't call it Asperger's syndrome. I don't say I'm an Asperger person. The reason I say I'm an Asperger person that every one of you should know, because people may say this to you, and any of you who are Jewish have strong feelings about Nazis who sent your ancestors to death. Well, let me tell you, I have strong feelings about Dr. Asperger, because Dr. Asperger wrote in his own words that autistic children, and he named them, one after another in his orders, should be sent for prompt treatment by Dr. Hekelius. And Dr. Hekelius ran what is now the infamous child euthanasia clinic in Vienna, Austria. So, Dr. Asperger may have seemed a great person to us in America 10 and 20 years ago, but Dr. Osberger's career is built on a foundation of dead autistic children. And I would urge you not to forget that, and that's why I do not identify with that. And the reason my book still says it is that the book went on to be a bestseller all over the world. And it is registered all over the world with that title. And we can't re-register it without a major to-do, changing its ISBN numbers and all that, so I'm stuck with it. But I do want you to know that that's why I don't describe myself that way anymore. So, coming here to Wake Forest, I thought at first when I flew down here yesterday that I didn't know anyone here, but it's really not true. I actually been here before, and I know a number of you, and several of you have come up and greeted me. And I'd like to speak to that also, about this idea that the generation that you are working with is, I hope, going to be the generation that really stops the unwitting and witting and cruel marginalization of neurodivergent people. And I learned that, actually, from the director of counseling at William and Mary when I joined the college. Warrenetta Mann, who's now here with you at Wake Forest. Warrenetta is black, and I of course, am white. Warrenetta and I grew up in the South as the civil rights era was at its peak. And my parents actually were both professors. I was born in Georgia. My parents met at the University of Georgia, and I was born there. My parents moved to Massachusetts to escape the anger and upheaval around civil rights movement in the South. And I grew up in kind of a, well, I guess it was a kind of a privileged academic community in Amherst, Massachusetts. That didn't stop me from growing up as a second-rate loser kid. It didn't slow that down one little bit. Some of you, you might have read my brother's book, Running with Scissors, about our childhood, and there's, family violence and domestic violence and sex abuse and all that kind of stuff in there. And before my brother wrote that book, people said, well, those kinds of things don't happen in good families, but most assuredly they do. And I came to William and Mary, and I met Warrenetta, and I got to talking to her, and I looked at her, and it's because I'm autistic that I don't really have any filter about what to say to people that's appropriate or not appropriate. But one day, we were talking about something, and I said to her, it's remarkable to me how I'm this tall white guy, and I'm like the stereotype of privilege. And here you are, and you're a small black lady, and I'm a dropout from a high school, and you're an honors graduate from one of the best colleges in the country. And look at you, you're poised and elegant and confident and strong. You're all these things that I'm not. And I thought, how could that be? And it took us a while talking about that, but now I see the answer, and it goes back to our childhood. Because people said hateful things to Warrenetta because she is black. They said hateful things to me, not because I was autistic, because no one knew about autism people like me at that time. They said hateful things to me because I didn't respond and act like people expected me to act. But that produced really different life outcomes, because when Warrenetta went home to her parents, she could say, oh, they said this about me, they said that about me. And Warrenetta's parents could say, honey, it's just hateful talk. They're trying to say that to you to tear you down, to try and make themselves feel bigger. And it just isn't true. Look at the leaders in our community. We have leaders in our black community we're all proud of. Look at the ministers in our church. Look at the businessmen that we trade with in town. Look at our black leaders in Washington, and look at our culture that goes back thousands of years in Africa. And what do you think that boy who's making fun of you has? Does he have any culture at all? He doesn't have anything. And Warrenetta could take that in, and she could think, yeah, and she could go to school, and she could read about African ancestry, and she could read about civil rights leaders, and she could read about black business leaders and everything else. And she could feel good. And what about me? I went home crying, just like a million other autistic kids, talking about the kids that called me a monkey face and a retard and a loser and all the other things they called me. And what does my mom say to me? Oh, you're not really a retard. You're not going to be any of those things. Where were the role models for me? So my mother would say, oh, maybe son, someday, maybe you'll learn to act right, or you'll learn to do better. Is that all I get? And I think about that now, and my mother loved me, and my mother wanted the best for me. But the fact is, my mother didn't really have any ammunition to help me. And I would suggest to you that it's probably not much different today. If I were to say to you, who are the neurodiversity leaders here in this city? And maybe you can name a few people. And who are the neurodiversity leaders in Charlotte? It's very unlikely you can name any there. Who are the neurodiversity leaders in Washington? Are there neurodiversity leaders you can think of in Africa, in England, in China? And the reason for that is that we have this whole generation, me, the people in their 50s, the people in their 40s, all of us who grew up before the modern understanding of autism and neurodiversity evolved, we grew up feeling like second-rate humans, as I said to you. And as second-rate humans, the last thing we want to do is stand in front of you and say, I'm a person with autism, I'm a person with ADHD, I'm a person with dyslexia. The reason we don't want to do that is because there is nothing good about autism. Autism is a medical term for a set of behaviors that doctors characterize as abnormal and undesirable. When a doctor sets a definition of autism down, there are no words, until very recently in that definition, that say anything whatsoever positive. A definition of ADHD is exactly the same. There are no words in that that say anything about how your aberrant behavior makes it hard for you to do what people expect of you. If you have Tourette's, you have a medical explanation why you say things people don't want to hear. If you have dyslexia, you have a medical definition or explanation for why you can't read, and maybe if it's your child, maybe your child will never read. There's nothing good about that, folks. But the fact is, the medical profession, by creating those definitions and passing them out to tens of millions of people in this country alone, and many, many more around the world, they did these generations a tremendous disservice. Because by telling us with the imprint of the medical profession what is wrong with us, without telling us what is right about us, they converted us forevermore into second-rate humans. It doesn't matter what our race is, what our sex is, or what our religion is. If we have these things, we are less than everyone else, because that's how they defined it. And folks, that's wrong. The idea of neurodiversity is a term that came from our community, from people like us. Judy Singer, an Australian friend of mine, is thought to be, and believes she is, the first person to use that term in writing. It's a thing that's been percolating for 30-some years in our consciousness and is now becoming mainstream. Neurodiversity is the idea, supported by science, that people who are born with developmental differences are born with those differences through a stable process of evolution. There have been people who you could diagnose with autism, dyslexia, whatever. We were there 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Some of you with autistic children recognize traits of autism or ADHD in yourselves. We've always been here, and the reason we have been here is that we provide a benefit to our species. Having those genes in the human genome makes us as a tribe more successful. And that's a really, really important thing to understand. We're here because we need each other. We have obvious aspects of disability. And because of that, we need people who don't have those disabilities, which is many of you. But folks like me have gifts that you need. And so there's a trade-off, right? You accommodate and support our disabilities. I can help see things that you can't see. And you know, it's fair to say that in doing so, I support your disabilities. You might think I can fix your car, or I can create a beautiful poem that you'll sing to your daughter every night. The fact is, you're disabled compared to me in creating poetry or fixing cars. And I'm disabled compared to some of you in reading body language and intentions and in other things. And we don't usually think of it this way, but that's what the foundation of mutual support is in life. And you might think, okay, well, how is this stuff good? How is it that my daughter can't even wear clothes without me cutting all the labels out because she says the clothes are too scratchy? Or how come my son can't even go into school because he says the noise is too much for him and he can't handle it? And if you think back a long way in time, oh, we got 5 minutes, I got to hurry up here. If you think back a long way in time, think about our ancestors in the Ice Age. And in the Ice Age, the only place just a little bit north of here that we could live was in caves and shelters during the wintertime. But in those years, North America was populated by cave bears and cave lions, and these were the kinds of things that would eat today's grizzlies for lunch. And the only way you could survive going into those caves is if you could tell which ones were safe and which ones weren't. And there was no amount of sensory sensitivity that was too much. If you were the person who could go in that cave and tell that it was safe, if you were right, your tribe lived. If you were wrong, you died. And so the person who had today's disability in yesterday's world was the star that everyone depended on. Modern technology has taken away the star power for those of us with those different abilities, and they have replaced it with mostly electronic sensors. But that doesn't mean that deep down we still need each other. You still need people with different brains for the poetry. You still need people with different brains for the fundamental concepts that automated circuits, automated systems can design and make. We still all need each other. And that is just such an important thing. A final thing that I'd like to touch on is somewhere in the audience is an old friend, Kim Shufran, who runs ICANN House. And where are you? Where are you back there? Okay. So anyway, Kim said to me, she was glad to see me back here, and she said, ABC is a different kind of place than ICANN House, and a different kind of place is a euphemism for ABC using or operating and billing for applied behavior analysis, ABA support for autism. And some people ask me, why would I support something that young people, some of whom have received ABA, say was harmful? And the answer is, I don't support all ABA. ABA, if it's given to kids who aren't consenting, who don't want anything to do with it, if it's given with punishment and withholding of affection, ABA can do lifelong harm. And I'll grant you that ABA is usually delivered with the best of intentions, but it's just like the people who said Little John wants to be alone, and that harmed me for decades. ABA can do that. But ABA can also be delivered in a kind and respectful and mutually accepting environment. And that environment happens when the child says, I want to work with my therapist on my words today. And so ABC's, one of their fundamental tenets is they don't deliver services to children who say, I don't want therapy today. And if a child says, enough, I can't do it anymore, they stop. There isn't any punishment, there isn't any withholding of affection. And that, I think, is not just how ABA should be, it's how all therapy and support should be. The cornerstone is that the recipient of the therapy is in charge. When they say, I don't want it, you stop. And so when you think about the debate on ABA, which is a big deal, I haven't really talked about my government service standing before you, but I served 15 years advising our government on autism policy. I retired as the senior public member of the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee, which produces a strategic plan for autism for our country back during the pandemic in 21. And all through that, I have lobbied to reform ABA in the direction the ABC folks here believe in too. So we share that belief, and that contrasts with the people in the community who say, I want to tear it down, I want to get rid of ABA, because ABA is the one therapy that, thanks to massive lobbying, has become acceptable for insurance and Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement in all 50 states. If we destroy ABA, if we tear it down, there won't be any insurance-funded autism support for most of the autistic people in America. So it is absolutely vital, folks, reform ABA in the manner ABC is showing you. And ABC is not alone. Other groups are doing this too. Take their lead and reform it. Get the practitioners' heads out of the sand. Recognize this is what we have to do. But by all means, do not destroy the one means of insurance-funded support, because if you do, you're going to create a situation where only the wealthy can afford compassionate autism services and everyone else will have nothing. And I think that's fundamentally wrong, and it goes against my beliefs in government service. If any of you would like to talk to me off stage about it, because we're running out of time, so I don't think I can take questions on stage, I'm happy to do so. But I strongly encourage you to support ABC not only for what they do for your children and the people you care about in this community, but I also encourage you to support them for what they stand for. And I encourage you to be prepared to support them more if they run into opposition from people who don't share our views in the ABA Licensing and Certification Committee. This is an important battle, folks, that we must win for the benefit of all people. And a final thing that I want to say to you about ABC that they exemplify is ABC has neurodivergent people like me in leadership positions, and the training of the behavior therapists at ABC is indeed led by a neurodivergent person. And that speaks exactly to the idea of nothing about us without us in disability advocacy. So I ask for those reasons that you support that. And if you'd like to talk to me, I'm going to go back here and sign books. There are books left on each of the tables. And I see some of you have been, passing them around, figuring who's going to be the one holding the bag when everyone gets up. And whoever gets the book, if you want to come over there, I'm going to go get my pen and back, and I'll sign them. So I want to thank you for joining me, and thank you for being here for ABC, and it's really cool to see you all. So,
John, thank you again for being here. Hearing from self-advocates encourages all of us to embrace and celebrate the unique differences that can and should make our world a more accepting place. What has always been impactful to me as a family on an autism journey is hearing from other families walking a similar path. Today, thanks to a talented production team, you will hear from families whose children are currently receiving services at ABC of NC. Their comments are honest. Their vulnerability will touch and inspire you. And I want to thank them, some who are here with us today, for their willingness to be so candid and share their story. After that video, I promise you will be inspired when Arturo Cornejo, a current ABC of NC client, and his mother, Tanya Garanzoe, come up here on the stage and share more on what ABC of NC means in their lives. The stories you are about to see and hear are why we are here today.
It's been challenging because we have two kids who are both autistic, who have similar but dissimilar needs. So when Ayush was diagnosed, I think I already knew things that started jumping out to me that were suggestive of autism. He wasn't talking, he had lost some words that he was saying. So he got diagnosed at 18 months. And when Ahan was diagnosed, which was almost 6-7 months later, I was happy that we finally knew and we could get him the help that he had needed. But you're like, now you have two children who are autistic and you don't know what the future is going to hold for them.
There's a long way to go.
We started looking for a diagnosis for Chloe when she was about 3. We were noticing that she couldn't get her words out to express what she needed. I was just like, I know there's something there. And my mother actually was one, she was like, I think she might be autistic. So I would just tell myself it's going to be okay. I know I've been worried about making sure that I could give her the things that she needed.
I know you're starting slow.
It was kind of heartbreaking because when they get to high school, people start to notice the difference and they could be bullied and he could fall into a depression, and we have to be there for him and we have to be his support. And that was probably the most heartbreaking thing that I heard. I don't care that he's got a diagnosis of autism, but I need my baby to survive.
Just don't give up yet, please. Ooh, pure beauty lies within. Ooh, come see you through my lens.
ABC of NC is a nonprofit autism services provider. On our campus, we have a non-public school serving children preschool through high school. And we also have an autism clinic where we provide counseling services for autistic people who may have co-occurring mental health conditions like anxiety and depression. We also provide intensive one-on-one applied behavior analysis, or ABA therapy. And we have comprehensive services, meaning speech language therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy that are available so that families can access services more easily.
There aren't a lot of places that sort of offer these kinds of services, and the public school system can only offer so much. And I knew that she needed a place that could sort of give her everything all in one. She could get her ABA therapy here. She could get specialized school instruction that caters more to what she needs. It was just the perfect place for her.
Just in my pediatric practice, I see a lot of autistic kids who are in different schools, and I feel sometimes are just existing. They just are there because they have to be there. But when we come here, I feel my kids are seen.
When I enter ABC's campus, I just feel overwhelmingly happy. Everyone's so friendly. Everyone's so warm. Everyone tells me how much they love Chloe. And it's really comforting knowing that all these people love my child so much and that they're there for her.
They truly believe in the mission. They truly care for the kids here. I feel like my kids are loved here.
You could see that they understood everything he was going through.
You knew that Killian was in there, but you just had to figure out how to tap into him and how to open that door. I just love knowing who my son is.
Show me where your darkness lies. You don't ever have to hide. Or you can be yourself. Yeah, you can be yourself.
For the past several years, we've been placing a strong emphasis around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We call DEIB, because we employ and serve folks from a variety of diverse backgrounds.
It's very important for our staff here at ABC to be committed to our DEIB efforts to ensure that everyone who enters our campus feels safe, accepted, and included.
The main thing for me that made ABC of NC stand out from all the other schools was acceptance. They accepted him for who he was and where he was on his journey. Here at the campus, there's a lot of diversity, and they treat everyone with respect and with kindness and with love.
Oh, you can be yourself. Yeah, you can be yourself.
Many times when families enter our campus, they will tell us, this is the first time that I've ever felt that people really understood who my child is, the first time they've had hope that their child could reach their full potential, and that there are people out there who will really value and respect their child for the individual that they are.
We are not trying to take away from who they are, but we are trying to add value or add some skills that will make them more successful in achieving their best potential.
Chloe has benefited from ABC so much. It's just easier for her to get through life and to navigate herself through challenges.
They've somehow took it a step further. I mean, this kid speaking sentences to us, he's just full on in the room present with us. Because of ABC of NC, I can talk to my son.
After spending time at ABC, autism is just a descriptor of Chloe, in the same sense that she's autistic. She's outgoing, she's happy, she's beautiful, she's musical, she's athletic, she's everything that she is.
Who knows you better? Who could love you anymore? You can trust me completely. I'm just asking for you to be yourself. Oh, you can be yourself.
I feel like we went from having kids, I didn't know what they were going to do, to seeing a lot of potential. There will always be hope. And that is what we found at ABC of NC.
everybody. My name is Tania Garanzuay, and this is my son Arturo. It's a pleasure being here today. Thank you for having us. What I have to say won't take up much of your time, but it does come from the bottom of my heart. ABC of NC began to be part of our families when my son Arturo was diagnosed with autism at around the age of 6. As expected, I felt lost and I didn't know what was the first thing I needed to do. But from the very first day, ABC of NC gave me and my family that peace of mind that every parent with children with disabilities deserves. Unlike public schools, which I believe are doing the best they can despite their limitations, ABC of NC did not see my son as a simple diagnosis or a problem to be solved, but rather they saw in my son the ability to learn and to be able to reach his maximum potential. ABC of NC gave my son the tools to have a decent life, and they not only became part of our family, but they gave us that hope that we so needed. Today, I can say that my son Arturo is the person he is thanks to ABC of NC and all the services they conveniently provide at their facilities. I have nothing but words of gratitude, admiration, and respect for all the staff, teachers, therapists, and people who are part of ABC of NC and who have marked my son's life with love and inspiration. Some angels walk the earth. Thank you for being one of them. You are a true blessing to my family and to many others. None of my son's success will be possible without the generous donors. Thank you all for your commitment and kindness and for providing a positive impact on my son's life. Many people say they want to help, but only a few step up and do it. And we know that you have a lot of choices when it comes to donating, and we're so grateful you chose ABC of NC. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, everyone, for ABC of North Carolina.
How about one more round of applause for Tanya and Arturo? What is a common thread among ABC families is what you just heard. The support and the nurturing and the love you feel inside that place, inside that very special place. And those sentiments are expressed or what my husband and I felt, and a lot of the uncertainty was what we felt when our autism journey began 25 plus years ago, worrying about finding support, community, and finding acceptance for our boy. After all, that's every parent's goal, right? For your child to be valued for exactly who they are. It's something Richard and I worried about when Jackson was diagnosed at 3. That was 1998, when diagnosis was still infrequent, and many pediatricians were not equipped to answer the bazillion questions that we had. It was like all of us these days without our smartphone and no GPS to tell us how to get from point A to point B. My day job has meant a lot of moves for our family periodically and finding programs and people that could help navigate Jackson's needs was hit or miss. It was something our founders, Felice and Richard Brenner, were also dealing with as well in the early aughts. And thankfully and remarkably, when Richard and I moved the family back to Winston in 2015, we were able to benefit, well, Jackson and all of us were really able to benefit from the dedication and the commitment of their family and so many of you in this room today. Our move, well, moving is difficult, period, right? But for Jackson, it was a seismic shift in his life. Our move coincided with his best friend, his younger sister Peyton, going off to college. He was getting a new room, a new routine. Nothing was the same. We had to find a new playground. We had to find a new Chick-fil-A. He was lost. And frankly, Richard and I were feeling a little lost as well. But ABC gave us all the soft landing pad we so desperately needed. We felt supported as we navigated what were going to be a difficult few years for Jackson as he was entering the end phases of the structure of a school environment. And he would be moving on into the everyday world, if you will. Teachers, therapists, the entire staff at ABC not only helped Jackson manage the anxiety and the stress that comes with new everything, they helped prepare him for what his life would be like when he didn't have school and he loved school so very much. We knew our family was supported, we were never judged, and our son's days were filled with encouragement. And I am so happy to say that his days are now filled with joy. And a lot of that is because of the foundation for the next phase of life that he was given at ABC. So today we are here to support ABC of NC, a nonprofit that has been improving the lives and enhancing and changing families' ability to with children that live on the autism spectrum for more than 20 years. And frankly, you make it happen with your donations. Before you even walked in or logged on today, this event's generous sponsors and supporters have already raised $80,000. But I am asking for each of your help as we close the gap to our goal of 150,000. As a member of the ABC of NC family and the autism community, I am asking today that you give to an organization that has given so much back to the Piedmont Triad. Your generosity is never taken for granted, and it will ensure that ABC of NC continue to provide quality autism services for families from any and all economic backgrounds. Something I believe to be very true, it is not the size of the gift that matters, but it's the size of the heart that gives it. So I'm asking today for each of you to open your hearts and give to ABC, knowing that each dollar does more than keep the lights on. Each dollar is a light of hope for families that are on an autism journey. Families that are looking for acceptance and inclusion and opportunity for their children. All themes our guest John Elder Robinson's bestseller, Look Me in the Eye, focus on and talk about. And as John said, he will be signing copies of his book, which are also available over at table 28. So if table captains, don't forget your copy. Also, everybody grab your copy of today's program, take it back to the office, take it to church, take it to your bunco game. I don't care. Pick a place and take it and share it with people that don't know about this organization and its mission, because that is how we are changing lives, by creating awareness. Now here's the money. I've already tried to warm you up with the heart thing. Now it's time to open your heart. So if you want to leave a check, there are envelopes on the table. If you prefer to go paperless, just hit the QR code that's also demonstrated on the table from your mobile phone. And if you're on the live stream, folks, text GLL to 41444 and complete your gift from there. There are lots of other ways to give, and they are on page 11 of your program. Much of what we had planned for today went really well. One thing didn't quite go as planned, and that was that our valet service did not show up. So on behalf of everyone from ABC of NC, let me apologize for that inconvenience. I think we can all agree that it's good that we're in Winston and this happened and not somewhere else like downtown Charlotte, because it's not quite the struggle that would have been. Can you imagine being in downtown Charlotte and the valet service not showing up? That would be a hot mess. So again, we apologize for that. But on behalf of everyone from the board and the staff and the wonderful clients and providers that we have, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here today. Your support and your gifts mean everything.